Welcome to the Explainer. Right, let's jump straight in because today we are going to completely dismantle a limiting belief that holds, honestly, so many of us back. And I'm talking about this myth, this idea that you have a fixed, unchangeable personality. We're going to look at how you can continuously create exactly who you are, and we'll be using a pretty incredible playbook from author Steve Chandler to do it. We're pulling our insights right from the source material here, Chandler's brilliant book, 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself. And what we're going to see as we walk through these concepts is that motivation, well, it's not just something you're either naturally blessed with or totally lack. It is actually a continuous, deliberate act of self-creation. And this opening premise is brilliantly illustrated by a historical fun fact. Get this. Charlie Chaplin once actually entered a Charlie Chaplin lookalike contest in Monte Carlo, and he came in third. Crazy, right? But it proves a point. Personality is completely overrated. The whole idea that you're somehow cemented into being a pessimist or an unmotivated person, it's simply not true. Who we are is literally a moment-to-moment choice, and the choices we make for our thinking either motivate us or they don't. So to understand exactly how to master those moment-to-moment choices, we're going to break Chandler's anecdotes down into a 3-part playbook: perspective and vision, focus and training, and action and simplicity. All right, let's kick things off with phase 1, perspective and vision, clearing the mental clutter. To clear that clutter, psychotherapist Davers Brandon uses this really intense deathbed exercise. Chandler describes actually being put through this exact process himself. He was asked to imagine lying on his deathbed, inviting the most important people in his life to his bedside one by one, and then speaking his absolute true feelings out loud to them. He said he just broke down crying because he realized he wasn't mourning his life. He was mourning the love he was losing, and specifically the communication of that love that had never even been there. This exercise strips away all the everyday mental clutter. It forces you to realize what's truly important by making you directly confront your own mortality. Chandler actually vowed from that day on to never leave anything unsaid. Now, you might be thinking, wow, doing this exercise sounds super morbid, but it's actually the exact opposite. As that classic Bob Dylan lyric points out, pretending you aren't going to die is actually detrimental to enjoying your life. It's kind of like a basketball player pretending there's no end to the game. They'd get lazy, they'd lose their intensity, and they'd definitely stop having fun. Paradoxically, vividly imagining our last hours creates this profound feeling of being born all over again. Okay, so once we clear that mental clutter and realize time is finite, we need a future goal, right? We need something to stay hungry for. And this brings us to a really fascinating story from 1976. Chandler was a sports columnist at the time, and he got assigned to spend a day with a young, totally unknown, and awkwardly muscular bodybuilder named Arnold Schwarzenegger. Over lunch, Chandler casually asked him a simple question. What are you going to do next, now that you've retired from bodybuilding? Arnold answered with this incredibly calm, unflinching voice, I'm going to be the #1 box office star in all of Hollywood. Now, Chandler was shocked. He kind of tried to hide his amusement. But Arnold explained his method, and it was brilliantly simple. He said you create a vision of who you want to be, and then you live into that picture as if it were already true. Notice what he did not say. He didn't say you wait around to receive a vision, you create one. You literally make it up. So the absolutely crucial point here is this concept of the true lie. Look, if it's hard for you to see your own potential, tell yourself a true lie. Chandler talks about a school poetry reading where 12-year-olds wrote these lie poems, making up unbelievably wonderful untruths about how great they were. And without even knowing it, they were doing exactly what Arnold did. Here's why this matters for you. Your subconscious mind doesn't know you're fantasizing. If you feed it a picture of your highest self, it just accepts it as the blueprint. And pretty soon, the lie becomes the truth.
This builds perfectly into phase 2, focus and training, preparing for the challenge.
To get to that big vision, you absolutely must control your focus. Jimmy Johnson used a brilliant analogy for this right before his Dallas Cowboys won the 1993 Super Bowl. He told his players, look, if I laid a 2x4 piece of wood across the floor, anyone could walk across it. Easy. But if I suspended that exact same 2x4 10 stories high between two buildings, almost everyone would fall. Why? Because instead of focusing on walking the board, their focus would instantly shift to that 10-story drop. And in life, we constantly lose focus because we look at the drop. We worry about the negative possibilities instead of just focusing on the execution of our goal. So how do you keep your focus when the stakes are high, when you're 10 stories up?
You do it by adopting the Navy SEALs mentality. Sweat more in peacetime so you bleed less in war. Simply put, the harder you are on yourself in practice, the easier life is on you in reality.
The author actually learned this principle firsthand playing Little League Baseball. He and his teammates were completely terrified of these overgrown opposing pitchers who were throwing the ball at just alarming speeds. It wasn't even fun to bat anymore. But his friend Rhett Nichols came up with a genius tension plan. He brought out a little plastic golf ball with holes in it. They went out to the park, and Rhett stood 3 feet closer than a normal pitcher's mound, and he just fired that little plastic ball as hard as he could. It was hilariously fast, and it curved and dropped incredibly sharply. The kids took turns trying to hit this impossible humming target. And the result? Well, by making their practice wildly difficult, the real pitches during their next league games suddenly looked like slow-motion white balloons. Chandler even hit his first and only home run after that session. So if you're afraid of an upcoming challenge, the strategy is always to stage a bigger battle in practice. This was literally Muhammad Ali's secret. He intentionally chose sparring partners who were superior to his upcoming opponents in specific skills. When the real fight came, he knew he had already fought those skills and won. If you have a terrifying presentation coming up, rehearse it in front of someone who scares you more. Staging a bigger battle absolutely obliterates your fear. And finally, we reach phase 3, action and simplicity, executing in the daily grind. This gets right to the point. Legendary coach Vince Lombardi was once asked why his world championship Green Bay Packers ran such an incredibly simple set of plays. His response? It's hard to be aggressive when you're confused. Mental clutter, complexity, having too many disjointed things to do, it just slows us down. Simplicity breeds aggressive action. To simplify your life, you need to look for unexpected combinations. Chandler talks about realizing he needed to go grocery shopping, but he also needed to read his daughter's book reports. And he really wanted to spend more time with his kids. Instead of seeing these as competing priorities, he just combined them. He took the kids to the store, sat at the deli reading the reports, while the kids enthusiastically ran the aisles grabbing groceries and checking in with him. In one single hour, he achieved 3 goals at once. List your tasks and execute them in one manic, focused blitz. And speaking of a manic blitz, check out CEO Bob Cother's ultimate time management system. Do everything right on the spot. Chandler was actually in Cother's office once and asked him to make a note to call someone later. Cother looked at him in absolute horror at the mere idea of making a note. Instead, he wheeled his chair around, picked up the phone, and booked the meeting right then and there. Handle everything immediately so you don't unnecessarily clutter up your future. Achieving simplicity is really just an ongoing process of carving away what isn't necessary. People often think creativity means making things complex, but true creativity is simplicity. It's the exact same way Michelangelo approached his masterpiece, the David. He saw the statue in the rough rock. His only job was to carve away the marble that wasn't David. To build momentum in your daily life, you've got to create a track record of finished tasks. If you believe you're a procrastinator, prove yourself wrong by writing down small things you actually finish. And here's a fascinating paradox for when you're dreading starting something, start slowly to finish fast. When you think about doing a task fast and furiously, it's overwhelming, so you naturally avoid it. But if you tell yourself you'll just start it in slow motion, kind of flowing into the work like a person made of water, the dread completely vanishes. You start easily, and naturally, you end up finishing faster. Ultimately, Aristotle taught us that motion creates the self. We become builders by building, we become brave by doing brave acts. Chandler compares this to making a snow angel as a kid in Michigan. The 2 movements, lying down and flapping your arms, create the angel. The universe is the snow, and the actions you take are the movements that create the self you want to be. So we've really come full circle, back to that deathbed perspective we started with. When we eventually leave this world, our thoughts and our unexpressed feelings won't matter. Action will be all that matters. So I want to leave you with this ultimate, provocative question to ask yourself today. What action will you take right now so that something in this world is different because you were here?